Pretty sure I'm playing that differently now. Please be good.
That's way too fucking loud.
I can't deny the insurmountable living seeing before me, proving I am my own worst enemy. Gotta know, I fucking know, leave me alone, where they think things exactly what they do.
That's exactly what.
I'm a freak, I'm a fiend, I'm a nobody, another casualty, a systematically cultivated stimulus. It's all in service to creation for instant gratification in this diluted travesty we call...
Almost had it. Fuck!
Our complacence and conscription and prostitution of our identity.
Not bad for scratch tracks. Good reference. We're at the mix. The simultaneously best and worst part about any new musical project. I'm still very much playing around with some characteristics of things like bus compression and some of the mastering effects here, but that's some scaling issues, but overall I think my signal chain is going to be pretty locked down from here on out, as it probably should be considering the composition and some of the other choices made for this album are locked down. So one thing I did very differently for these sessions is, instead of recording each song in an individual project and then importing the final mix into a separate project for mastering, which is what I did for the last EP, I'm doing every song on its own track in one project, all 25 and a half minutes of it. That has some disadvantages, to be sure, but it also has some major advantages in that any change I make, I can be for sure is going to be applied evenly across each track. Now, in order for that change to sound the same, because of tempo differences and some things, I have to be really careful about stuff like, for instance, multiband compression, or things like, stack up of limiting on low end build up, bass and kick together. But for the most part, I think this is going to come out to be a relatively clear but big mix. And this is one of those projects where I'm very much going to consciously sacrifice a little polish in favor of hugeness. Not to say so won't be clear, but if there are a couple spots where it are a little smeary, I'm willing to take that sacrifice and move with it, instead of cutting every little piece here and level balancing second by second or bar by bar. I'm not doing that. This is going to be a little more raw in that way. So we've got all of our reamps here. I've kept all the DIs in case one day I wanted to try it out through a different set of gear. I've got all the semi-raw drum files. They are pre-mixed for the most part, but I'm doing some secondary pass of some light compression and EQ and things just to get it to sit with the guitars the way I want it to. My big reamped rhythm guitar fest is down there. Got multiple buses all feeding into more multiple buses, and each one for the guitars is a mix of impulse responses, and that's going to a master bus with some more precision EQ, and definitely ended up chopping and boosting more frequencies than I would have liked to for this to work, but especially considering this is the first project where I'm really serious about getting the vocal mix right. Some of that stuff had to be done, and it's just the nature of the beast, but for perhaps the instrumental mix I won't have to do as much of that kind of work. As far as dynamic range goes, I'm shooting for a little bit less than like Black Album. I don't want this to be just a loudness wars casualty. That's not the goal here. I want it to sound big and have some headroom, but I want the quiet moments to sound quiet, and I want the cracks of the snare and the fills of the toms, and especially when there's a big stack up of multiple guitar harmonies. I want that kind of stuff to make a profound impact. I don't want there to be this loudness range of basically zero, so it's probably going to be a little more quiet than people might be used to for contemporary productions, and I think it will slot somewhere in between mid-90s kind of dynamic ranges and stuff that you get today. That's at least my plan. We got some standbys, got some plugins that I'm sure you'll have seen make the rounds. I'm actually playing with this More is More from Reed of Auto Audio. He sent this over. I'm quite liking it. I think is kind of an in-between solution, and an easy in-between solution for some of the stuff to augment what Ozone is doing. I think this is going to end up on the final version of the master. Got flatline, any clipper would probably do justice there. One thing I am really liking is double tap from Systematic, or Submission Audio rather. Systematic Productions is the sister company. That's working really well for the bass guitar application, especially since I've got 3 tracks of the shit, and there's some other staples. There's waves everywhere, but in general it's a lot of instruments feeding into stereo buses, sometimes feeding into a second stereo bus if there's a mix of the mix, so like drums are going to their own thing, snares are a stack up of 3 different microphone placements going into a bus, and that bus is going into another bus with the kick as well, and then that's going into the instrument bus, and then parallel to the instrument bus is the vocal bus all goes into the master bus, and then all that master then goes into the stereo output, which I'm using as my master track. So it can get this could potentially get messy if someone were to just dive in here sight unseen, but it's a workflow. It's working for me. I don't think I would do this for something I really want super pristine and crisp, but for what I'm doing here, trying to make each thing sound rather homogeneous, I'm not doing any crazy different compositions across each song. This is working out quite well, and for this project, maybe this would work even for a 8 to 10 song affair. At this point, we don't have a whole lot of loudness going on comparatively. Master limiters aren't doing a whole lot. Toms are big without being too splatty. Got a little bit of an EQ match going on just to get it closer to a reference that I really liked. Of course, my own custom inputs as well. Here without it. Still a rather clear mix. Just quiet. I struggle with drums every time because I get really ear fatigued and then they end up way too quiet or way too soft. So I hope I do Paris justice here, because we had a great performance. I want to make sure they shine. I want to make sure my stuff shines. That's the nature of mixing. You're always making sacrifices somewhere. Like I've sacrificed the organization of this project. There's a lot going on here. But essentially, the name of the game here is to make it kind of old school sounding without being too overly distorted in any one place, using some contemporary tricks, of course. But I'm not, time aligning a bunch of stuff. I'm not, automating EQ changes. I'm not automating really anything other than a couple level changes throughout, and that's why the read button is pressed right now, because obviously I'm dipping back the volume when on rhythm guitars when leads come in and stuff like that. But I'm not even doing things like sideband compression or side chain compression. That's not happening. Whenever there's a bass guitar and a kick drum at the same time, there's just going to be a lot of low end. It's the way it is. I didn't want to have this super artificial, super contemporary sound. Ideally, I would have this playing through some infinite headroom system and just have all the instruments at full dynamic range. But that's not how streaming works. So you got to work within those limits. But overall, I'm pretty pleased with the way this is turning out. It still has a homebrew element to it, still some rawness, but I think it sounds better than it should for coming out of, this spare bedroom.